welcome. We are very happy to have you here with us this afternoon. I think we have a great panel to talk a little bit about how this culture is being created for a better, I think we'll ultimately end up in better preparation for our students, but also engaging and embracing this technology. So why don't we, do each of you have a mic, or are we passing one down? Okay. So let's just start, if you would, but why don't we have each one of you introduce yourself and what you're doing, and just kind of a little opening statement.
My name is Shannon Allen. I work for Innovate Alabama. I lead our talent initiatives. Innovate Alabama is a public-private partnership focused on driving innovation, entrepreneurship, and tech across the state of Alabama.
Hey, I'm Josh Jones. I'm CEO at QuantHub. We are an educational platform that teaches data and AI skills through a microlearning gamified environment. And we work across sectors from federal to K-12, higher ed, and corporate. And so we work to really integrate and prepare the workforce of tomorrow with data and AI skills.
Hi there, I'm Nicole Engelbert. I'm the Vice President of Product Strategy at Oracle, one of those firms that's buying all those NVIDIA chips kind of through the mail. But my responsibility is really looking at kind of what you all will need kind of in your student system and what your students will expect from your student systems, not tomorrow, but 5, 7, 10, 15 years out. So you can imagine that AI is the top of my to-do list every day, each and every day.
I'm Matthew Hudnall with the University of Alabama. I'm an associate professor in management information systems in our College of Business. I'm also our faculty senate president, and been working in Alabama systems for 20 some odd years. So if you ever get a nice printed ticket from a state trooper, yeah, I kind of wrote that software. Or if you had to provide proof of insurance when you register your vehicle, yeah, that's my fault too. So I do lots of different state systems that integrate data. And in teaching, I teach enterprise application development, which has a number of AI components that are integrated directly into the curriculum.
So you have your own security detail?
For the ticket side of things, pretty much.
So why don't we just, and since you have the mic, we'll go ahead and go back this way. You know, one of the things I was excited about this panel are the very different worlds that all of you live in. And so I think it would be really great for us to hear a little bit about your perspective on what's happening in your world and how does that impact everybody else's world, right? So as you think about, it's on your to-do list every day. So how is that changing how you're doing your work, but how you see it's going to also change how we all do ours?
It's a great question. Yeah. So, you know, from AI perspective, you know, it's definitely influencing my teaching environment. And I've made the choice to embrace AI. So I require my students to use AI in my programming class. In fact, their final projects, it's a good chunk of their grade that they implement an AI model directly into the project. And so from a pedagogical perspective, I've absolutely embraced it. Although I recognize through other disciplines, it's a lot harder to figure out how AI fits into certain curriculum. So I think that's an inherent challenge that higher education in general is facing. Without a doubt, our students are embracing AI and using it in every way possible. I have a 16-year-old son, and I'm constantly having to get on to him about not using AI to answer everything. So I think it's still developing good problem-solving skills within our students is a foundational concern, and one that we have to find innovative ways to address to make sure that our students and future leaders of our society can still have good critical thinking skills while leveraging AI.
So I'm going to start with a kind of weird analogy, but stick with me. I promise it's not kind of just kind of bonkers. So today I didn't resist the urge to get the cheesecake. It was very good, and I'm here in the South, and I was told I should eat all the Southern things, so I had the cheesecake. But as a product strategist, I have to resist the urge to grasp at the shiny tech toys. So Oracle has about 40,000 developers. So 40,000 coders kind of across kind of a very large company. And coders, kind of as a good professor knows, they like to build stuff and they like shiny tech toys a lot. So I have to resist the urge when it comes to AI to kind of throw it against everything. Say, I'm going to put it against a transcript. I'm going to put it against a fee calc. I'm going to put it kind of against a course registration everywhere. AI for everyone. I'm Oprah. But instead, I have to think about, and the team thinks about, and we call it not solutioning, but thinking about where are the most painful points in the student journey, in the institutional experience. What's the problem there? And what are the different vehicles and ways that we can get up and under and solve that problem? Sometimes it's not going to be kind of AI. Sometimes it's going to be, my goodness, Ocean County Community College talked about just a simple bot kind of solving their problems, solving the core root problem. But that's kind of what we're grappling with at Oracle, is where does the technology can have a meaningful impact on solving our most pressing pain points, and then backing into new ways kind of delivering the services, new ways kind of conceiving the student experience.
We throw AI at everything. So I am Oprah. If you look under your seats, AI, no. Seriously, we do throw AI at everything. So it's funny, talked about the diversity. We're a much smaller firm, but certainly everywhere we can. If you're an employee and you ask me if we can subscribe to some new AI service, the answer is always yes. So I don't even think about it, just go do it. We'll check it, we'll verify for security, for rights, copyrights, things like that. We review, and every quarter it's like, are we still using these services? But as a small innovative firm, we're looking for every possible way that we can explore. And part of that's because we teach AI. And so we really practice what we preach. Our employees actually have to go through our platform itself and actually get the credentials, around prompt engineering and AI tool selection and things like that. So we're a bit of a different animal in that regard, but we use it. Our engineers use it to write code. We use it for grant applications. We use it for HR, for job postings. We use it as a thought partner, as a tool. We use it for marketing purposes, for copywriting. So we're throwing just everything possible we can at it, while also realizing, talking about the ethical considerations, the legal implications, like when you upload a document, are you giving that away to a third party that doesn't have rights to it? So when I say we throw it at everything, we're not being sloppy or just, wanton in our use of it, but we are very aggressive in that. And then the other thing I'll say is all of our educational materials are now actually created by AI. We don't fully trust it, so we don't expose a chat engine to an individual, because there are hallucinations, there's drift, there's all sorts of issues that we see some of the other learning companies doing that. We're not going to take that far of a step, but we use it behind the scenes. So we use it as a tool. So we built our own prompt engineered system for subject matter experts to essentially accelerate that content creation. So before a student sees it, it's been touched by a psychometrician, an instructional designer, and a subject matter expert, but it's definitely not been created fully by hand from scratch. So for us, I would say it's certainly a different perspective, but different types of organizations and different operating modes for sure.
So that's actually a great example. I shared this in the last session too, about knowing where the human in the loop is. So that's really cool. And for Innovate Alabama, before you talk about yours, one of the things that I find interesting with the public-private partnership is y'all are also really kind of targeted on educating the next generation of workforce. Could you kind of weave that into this discussion?
Yes, absolutely. So again, Innovate Alabama, the work that we do is focused around 3 core pillars. So talent development, which is primarily kind of where we're adding into this conversation, but also access to resources and lifestyle and recreation. And so we are fortunate to be tasked with the work of figuring out who is doing the great work around those things and partnering with them, which is great, because if it was left up to me to build programming around AI, we would all be in trouble. So we get to partner with great partners like QuantHub that is really working to prepare the next generation of talent to be able to be contributors to this workforce so that it can sustain the innovation economy that we're working to grow. So that's really where we lean in. What we're seeing, we are looking for, actively searching for organizations that are doing that work, who are staying on the cutting edge, but who are also incorporating the critical thinking side. Because I think when you hear whether legislators or educators talk about their fears around AI, it's that, well, we're just going to teach kids that to just ask a chatbot a question and they're never going to think on their own. But there's a level of critical thinking that has to happen with AI as well. So organizations that are really training in that aspect is really kind of how we work, is finding those organizations, finding those partners that we can support and resource and help them scale their capacity for what they're doing.
Very good. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting dynamic, isn't it? With figuring out, in fact, at our commission meeting, one of our commission members made the comment that, or they paralleled AI to calculators when calculators came out, and how all the math teachers said, oh my gosh, kids will never learn math again. And actually one of our university professors who's on the commission said, no, you can't compare those. Because now what he meant, I think you can compare, but what she was pointing out was with a calculator, if you put a garbage in, you get garbage out. But with generative AI, you may still get an answer, right? So it was kind of an interesting thing that there's a lot of symmetry of things we've experienced in education before to now. So for the four of you, I'd like for you to kind of transition a little bit and sort of go into your advisory mode. So our folks here, they're working at various institutions and state agencies. Think about what do they need to do to start to adjust to this? Because, I think that we can all agree, even the most ardent banner of AI person that I've ever spoken to agrees that we're behind the eight ball, that kids are coming in knowing way more than we ever did, right? So put on your advisory hat for a moment. What kind of advice do you give on how to adjust, and maybe even with you starting a little bit about how you're going to think about preparing that workforce of the future?
Absolutely. So I can talk you through a few of the programs that we support. It only makes sense to start with Alabama Data Scholars. That's led by QuantHub. We partner with them on that. So they are engaging high school juniors and seniors through this internship program with hands-on project-based learning, data science, and AI projects. And so this past summer, we had 26 students interning at, and Josh could talk about this so much better than I can. So if I say anything crazy, just let me know. 26 students interning at 21 different companies across the state. And these are companies like Ada International, Buyer Borrow Music, Talent Engines. And they were focusing on things like autonomous warehouse data analysis and AI-driven storytelling. They were helping to train AI and machine learning models for risk analysis. And one intern ended up saving their employer like $2,500 over the summer through that risk analysis platform that they helped to build. They also were doing data preparation for the purposes of teaching AI models. And so they're getting this hands-on learning experience. They're working on projects that have meaning. And that's really important with these internships, giving students projects that have meaning, not just busy work. And so the employer feedback was, one, do they have to go off to college? Can I just hire them? They're so smart, they're so skilled, they're so trained. And then two, EDPA, the Economic Development Partnership of Alabama, they took on an intern. And she built out an AI model that analyzes, summarizes, and creates action steps for their business development calls. They used it today. She's been gone for 3 months. They're still using her project that she created. And so really creating those hands-on experiences that have meaning. So, we also work with some higher ed programs like the HBCU Innovation Experience in collaboration with the Alabama Collective. We work with the Emerging Innovation Scholars Program that was launched at the University of Alabama, but is expanding to 4 other institutions. And the cool thing we're seeing with like Emerging Innovation Scholars, it's an entrepreneurship-based program, was initially intended to be kind of industry agnostic, but of course, our student teams are creating products that leverage AI, their tech solutions. And so one of the teams created a tool called Study Buddy. It's a 24/7 accessible AI tutoring program with a target audience of K through 12 kids. They won like $3,000 to continue to develop that product. Another young lady through the HBCU Innovation Experience out of Alabama A&M developed a similar product. It's called Tutor Tunes, AI-based, like cartoon character tutor. And it was very narrow in that it was helping elementary age students improve their reading and math proficiencies. So she won $10,000 to continue to build on her prototype. And so what we're finding is if we can find those student entrepreneurs who are leveraging this technology, they're building these companies off of it, can we invest in them, pour into them? Not only are they creating solutions, but a really cool bridge that we're seeing is college students leveraging AI for tools that can possibly be implemented in K through 12 classrooms. So there's this really cool bridge that's being built. And so I think that's what we're seeing is like investing in entrepreneurship for students, but then also creating those hands-on projects and learning experience.
Awesome. Josh, I don't want to lead you on particularly, but your perspective is pretty interesting because you're kind of an interface between what's going on in classrooms in K-12, and you're working obviously in higher ed too. But first of all, it's great to hear how you are actually approaching using AI as far as the development. But could you kind of weave in a little bit about what are you guys kind of hearing in the field right now about how kids are thinking about some of this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say, so Quant Hub is available to any school, any K-12 middle school or high school in the state that wants it. They just have to raise their hand, talk to Veronique outside. So we've got, I think, about 135 schools across the state using it right now. It's a gamified platform where students get points for correct answers. If you get too many wrong, it kicks you out for a short period of time. And so out of that gamification, we actually have a leaderboard where we can see across the state which students have the most, what we call neurons or points. And we give away things like AirPods, and we're going to give away an Apple Watch next month. You can imagine that incentivizes quite a few students. And one day we just realized, hey, we've got this great insight across students really going above and beyond what the teacher is assigning in the classroom. We really need to get those kids plugged in from a career perspective. And so that's when we presented this idea to Innovate Alabama. And really, quite honestly, I don't think we would have done this program had it not been for their support and their encouragement and the financial support to get this launched. So props to you guys. Thank you for making this happen. It really is, when you talk about workforce development, making that a possibility. I will add one thing. We actually are opening it up to undergraduate students this year as well. So we're partnering with both high schools and colleges. But what we're seeing is that if you put it in the hands of kids and you make it accessible, in our case, micro learning, so 5 to 10 minute lessons, like as a bell ringer or as an exit slip, there are a lot of kids that find it interesting, that want to learn how to do prompt engineering. We've got courses on AI ethics and things like that that are going really well. So we're getting a lot of really good response from it. I'll say earlier, I think in one of the early sessions, someone made the comment, you're not going to get replaced by AI. You're going to get replaced by someone who is using AI. I would echo that. I would encourage you to think about this term called skill inflation. So another reference to the World Economic Forum earlier today. Put differently, over the next 5 years, they're anticipating 23% structural job churn. So old jobs disappearing, new types of jobs being created. 23% over the next 5 years. Historically, it's been about 1% a year, okay? So from 1% a year to, call it 5% on average per year. And so we've got to retrain ourselves. No one in this room is going to put their money in a money market account that's paying 1% right now, right? Because you're going to lose money because of inflation. So we can lock into that, but if we go another year without upskilling at any age, then we're essentially falling behind from a competitive standpoint. So really, I do believe there's going to be a widening gap between the haves and the have-nots, but it's going to come down to who is actually becoming what we call data literate or AI fluent. And so those foundation layer skills, and we're seeing a lot of kids across the state really grab onto that. So that's certainly very encouraging.
That's great. Nicole, Oracle's doing some pretty incredible stuff. I mean, I know that, especially here in Alabama, despite the FAFSA debacle that occurred, that apparently some people at USAID didn't acknowledge, had it not been for Oracle being a great partner with the agency, Alabama probably couldn't have made the progress it had. So you guys are also seeing this from a slightly different perspective. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I mean, we're honored that, every single graduating high school senior in the state of Alabama actually touched AI
Yes.
as they submitted their FAFSA the last few years. So the first bit of advice I would give to all of you is that we are going to get this all wrong. This is all going to be completely different 5 years from now. Right now, we're thinking Blockbuster, and it's going to be Netflix, or it's going to be Roku. It's going to be it is going to play out differently than we are thinking it's going to play out kind of right now. That's how technology, kind of innovation happens. The unexpected will happen. So the first bit of advice is that institutions need to create more space to get it wrong and to be okay with getting it wrong and then changing. That's not really in the institutional culture and DNA. We like to plan out every detail, have the governance structure, have a strategic planning committee, have a lot of documents created. But AI is changing so rapidly that even within Oracle, we created a kind of almost a tiger team kind of onto itself, with tens of thousands of people kind of on it, who are just cycling through all different models and thinking about how this will play out. The second bit of advice is to partner with others. I know this is dissonant kind of advice that I'm giving you, is to be willing to fail, but then shift the risk of failure kind of onto your partners. But a lot of the build in AI and in large language models and these new technologies, incredibly expensive, incredibly capital intensive, incredibly risky from what will compliance look like kind of with these technologies? How do you, what's the traceability kind of this data? It ain't cheap kind of to do. And the money you have, the resources you have should be about kind of teaching, learning, and research, not kind of cleaning up debacles because you bet on the wrong horse when it came to the technology. And the third bit is I referenced 40,000 developers at Oracle. There's 160,000 employees at Oracle. So 120,000 people are not coding. 120,000 people are working with the humans, are kind of telling the stories and the narratives. We got two of our account managers kind of out there in the back selling kind of the technology. So if as an institution you're framing that the only vehicle, the only highway to AI is being able to kind of code and be an architect and those types of jobs, you've totally missed it. Most of the jobs related to this are going to be kind of around the technology. And this is where higher education should be kind of doubling down on, how do humans communicate? How do humans encourage creativity? How do humans kind of have integrity and dignity and kind of bring those bold new ideas to bear? Because the large language models just, they bring back kind of what has been developed because they're trained on existing data. So don't lose that kind of in this story, and higher education is brilliant kind of at that.
So I know you've already got, as you can tell, the last three, I threw curveballs at all of them. But I don't think this is too much of a curveball, but you made the comment that you require your students to use AI. And so amongst the other stuff you wanted to say, I'd also love to hear, how have your colleagues responded to that? Like, are they on board with that, or are you really the tip of the spear?
Well, I guess I should start out institutionally at the University of Alabama. Within our syllabi, we have a section specifically targeting generative AI. So the instructor can choose, is AI allowed? If it is allowed, does the student have to disclose if it was used? So we have a couple of different criteria that the instructor can choose for the syllabus for the class. So there aren't a lot of classes at UA besides the ones that are specifically targeted towards training for AI and teaching AI. There's not a lot that have AI already integrated in their curriculum, but that's going to fundamentally have to happen. A shift in pedagogical approaches to teaching is really what's needed in order to address AI. And when I say AI, primarily we're talking about large language models, generative AI like ChatGPT, because that's primarily what is the concern with students leveraging that form of AI towards cheating or information enhancement within their classroom environment. So I think the ways in which we approach just teaching in the classroom needs to shift. So instead of, write an essay about the Civil War, it may well be that draft 5 different prompts for whatever your favorite generative AI large language model is, ChatGPT, let's go with that. Give me 5 different prompts and what were the responses that the AI gave you, and compare and contrast the responses that the AI gave you, right? Based off of the prompts that you gave it. That's a different way of approaching much in the same, a similar problem, but it allows the student to really read through and understand the context of the learning element that they were tasked with, but just approaching it from a different angle. So I think it's a shift in the way that we've taught. So I think that's a big change. The other thing I want to point out is nationwide, we're faced with an enrollment cliff. So between 2025 and 2026, beginning in one of those 2 years, we will see about a 15% reduction in the number of students in higher education between that time frame and 2030. That's going to have a large impact amongst a number of institutions of higher education. We may see closures of a number of colleges, but I think that's also an opportunity, right? Because we've talked about this need to upskill, this need to train our workforce. So there's a unique opportunity that's really we've been presented with, all right, we're going to see a reduction in enrollment, but then we have a society that needs to be trained on something. Yep. That's a great opportunity for upskilling and micro-credentials and certifications, ways in which institutions can fill that gap of that 15% enrollment drop that we're currently facing.
I think that's a great point. I shared a statistic in the last meeting that only 48% of the population by 2030 will be of traditional working age. And we need all of them to be in the workforce. And the engine that drives a lot are our higher ed institutions, right? So to kind of just switch gears a little bit, and since you have the mic, we're going to go back around this way. But actually, if any of you want, we don't really have to be that formal. If one of you just wants to jump in, that's fine too. But, the history of education is kind of littered with all these shiny objects, right? We get excited about something, and, sometimes it ends up, my experience being kind of like my kids when they would open gifts on Christmas morning and end up playing with the box more than they played with the actual toy. What kind of advice can we give our audience here about how do we avoid some of those mistakes in the past? And how do we remain focused on what is really the larger goal here of, or at least, well, it's my largest goal when my kids were younger was I didn't want them living with me. I love them, but I wanted them out of my basement. I wanted them to have their own jobs. I didn't want to buy their Cheetos. I needed them to buy their own, right? So how do we do that? What kind of advice do you have for that?
Well, I guess, yeah, at my core, I'm an engineer. And as I've taught my son, no matter if I'm fixing an engine or a lawnmower or air conditioner, I always tell them inevitably you're going to need a flat bladed screwdriver. So you probably ought to take a flat bladed screwdriver with you to whatever project you start. Well, that definitely doesn't apply to AI. AI is not a let's throw it at as you said earlier, let's throw it at everything possible. You know, we need to be able to appropriately train our students on what AI is and how to use it effectively, but that doesn't mean that we should integrate it into every aspect of academia. That doesn't mean we have to change our enrollment process or change our scholarship application processes. We don't have to change our core business functionalities just because we can. We don't have to do that. There's aspects that could be augmented or better enhanced with AI involved, but at a minimum, we do have to train our students in how to effectively use and understand AI.
So I do this workshop with institutions and I hand out these processes, the ones that we really hate, things like transfer credit evaluation. No one likes transfer credit evaluation. You don't like looking at, you know, intro to community. You don't like that. No one likes that process. No one likes satisfactory academic progress. No one likes change of major. But we all have in our head right now, you probably many of you are thinking through, okay, these are the steps for that process. And typically what will happen is someone from your campus will go to EDUCAUSE or some regional event and be like, oh, I saw this toy. I want this toy. I have to have it. And then all of a sudden the president or the provost is knocking down your door saying, why haven't we adopted XYZ technology and layering it into change of major, transcript evaluation, satisfactory kind of academic progress. Where we get into the kind of discarded Christmas gifts at Stephen's house is we don't think about what could that business process, that institutional process be? How could it be radically different? Now, transfer credit, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily kind of go to the advisor in the registrar's office and then get routed to the department chair. And it doesn't have to go through that. You know, it could go through kind of the AI saying 99 times out of 100, you've accepted this course at XYZ University for this major. Would you like to accept this transfer credit evaluation as proposed? Yes, I would like to do that. And all of a sudden transfer credit becomes something that's done as the student is applying to the institution, as opposed to a process that unfolds as the student is, you know, worst case scenario, a first semester sophomore kind of student.
That's just crazy talk.
It's, yeah, but exactly. But when we start like just layering the technology kind of onto the process, we say, juice wasn't worth the squeeze on this one, didn't improve anything. But if you look at it from a business process first and say, what is a good business process kind of here? And then architect the technology around it, it's a very different outcome for the institution and for the students, and a lot less wrapping paper for Stephen's wife to clean up kind of on Christmas afternoon.
Love it.
Great.
So I've had the privilege of working with multinational firms for about 15 years now to help them build and execute data science and AI strategy. Companies like Samsung, Chick-fil-A, Toshiba, and so forth. And what I've seen over the last decade and a half is a series of trends. And essentially what happens is insert new technology here, and executives hear about it on the golf course, the CIO, CTO, whoever, and they come to you and say, here's some money, I need you to go build me. So 2013, 2014, it was Hadoop. Like, I need big data. I don't know what it is. I don't know what Hadoop is, but I need it, go build it. A few years later, I've got to have dashboards. A few years later, I've got to have crypto and blockchain. I don't know why, but we need blockchain. A few years later, I've got to have generative AI. I don't know why, but we need generative AI. And so we've seen this every couple of years, this happens. And part of the problem is that people like to tell stories, especially exciting new things. And as they tell stories again, and the stories get bigger and bigger, and the features get better and better. And the marketing department gets ahead of the engineering department with what they're actually delivering. And so the advice that I would give to you when you think about the shiny new object, if you will, is set the technology aside for a moment and say, what is the business case? What is the goal that we're achieving or attempting to achieve with this? Are we decreasing churn? Are we increasing grades, student satisfaction? Focus on that and then come back to the technology and say, can that technology help me achieve this? So again, the first thing is, as exciting as the technology is, forget that it's really neat and say, what is it doing for me? What is it helping me accomplish? So once you do that, the next thing that I would encourage you to do is consider risk factors. A lot of different ways to do this, but call it R0 through R4. R0, very little risk. Think of a software update on your phone, 18.0.1, right? We're just correcting some bugs, nothing very major. All the way to R4 is we're no longer using phones anymore. We've got this new technology to communicate with. So, as you add risk to it, you're doing more and more new things, new capabilities, new technologies. And the problem is that a lot of people want to jump to R4 right out of the gate, and it almost always fails because you can't build a complex system. You can only build a simple system and add complexity as you go. So when you're thinking about implementing AI, again, I'll repeat that. Think about what is the capability that it's giving you, and then how do you get on first base as opposed to trying to hit a grand slam. Just make some minor incremental progress, then look back and iterate on that. Because if you look at your ability to do that versus what marketing is telling you the tool is going to do, it's never going to deliver on marketing's promises, but you can get some progress if you take it incrementally.
I would say if we're in the business of getting kids out of basements, even though my dad would be so happy if I moved back to his basement. He wants a compound. It's his dream. There has to be more collaboration and synergy between education and industry. So to give you an example, we have a new program that we are supporting out of the Wiregrass region with cybersecurity. So it's the Alabama Cybersecurity Fellowship. And this program started with a consulting firm. They consult on federal government contracts. They do cybersecurity for the federal government. They're located right there in the Wiregrass region of Alabama. They were bringing in new employees who were graduating out of the cybersecurity programs from the local colleges right around there in the Wiregrass region. And they were seeing a deficiency in the skills that they needed versus what these graduates were coming in with. And so the owner of the firm went back to the school that he graduated from, their cybersecurity program 20 years ago. Nothing had changed. Nothing. It was still the same program from 20 years before. And so he was like, oh, this is where the gap is. And so what he did is he did a little pilot of his own. He brought in one intern and said, you come in and let me teach you the things that you need to know to be in this industry today. This young man had to be awesome because they didn't pay him. So he picked doing this for free and bettering himself over going and working at Chick-fil-A. They had great success. I think they've hired him on now. He's great. So what they're doing now is they're collaborating with other industry partners, not all cybersecurity firms, just because cybersecurity, just like AI, is needed in every industry, right? And AI plays into cybersecurity. And they've come up with a list of skills and proficiencies that they need their employees to have when they graduate from school. And so they've created an internship to go alongside the last semester of these students' schooling from their 2-year school. But the end goal is to then take what's happening in this cohort and implement it into the curriculum of the schools in the area. And so I think the question of like, what does industry need from the graduates in the sense of AI? That question has to be asked by the educational institutions so that that curriculum can continue to evolve and adapt to the current needs of the industries. So that's how we get kids out of basements.
Yeah, and I'm lucky because both mine are out of the basement, but it took a little bit of work. Well, with one of them, the other one, she was glad to leave. She was ready to leave. I do want to leave a couple minutes in case there's questions, but one last kind of speed round here. It's always good to leave on hope, right? So what's the biggest opportunity that you see that's right in front of us that we need to reach out and grab? I know you guys are doing a lot of work with startups in Alabama. But what do you see as the thing that not the shiny toy, it's actually the opportunity we've been waiting for? Any of you can start.
I can start because I got a microphone. We'll give you a break from having to first each time. One of the products that I oversee has a number of giant COBOL engines in it. Let me tell you, finding COBOL developers, tricky business. Let me tell you, they're all retired. They're playing golf down here in Alabama. These large language models, they're not just for kind of interacting with students and being external facing. You can actually develop technology with them. So it's a little creepy because the machine is building its own replacement. It's definitely out of Terminator, but that is really exciting because what that does is for developers, it's no longer about kind of creating the commodity functions in software, but about innovating. And so we heard this from both of the keynotes today, that the pace of innovation, if we get this right, will be profoundly faster because the machine is going to be taking on kind of the commodity development of other machines. And so that's what I'm really excited about. It also means I don't necessarily have to hire a bunch of COBOL developers to modernize those engines.
What I'm hearing is if I win the lottery, I can be Iron Man.
You can.
Okay, all right.
I'll actually quickly echo that. You said exactly what I was going to say, so I'll just add very briefly. It's lowering the barriers to entry to innovation. So it used to be to build a particular product, you need to hire 100 developers. Well, now maybe you can do that with far fewer than that. And you can point your phone at an app and say, make me an app like this. And maybe not perfect, but the ability to rapidly prototype and to explore and to launch new businesses. I would say for those of us in the room that like entrepreneurship and startups and small businesses, I feel like we're about to enter an era where you're going to see a lot more rapid innovation and iteration. And I was kind of joking earlier about the difference between Oracle and Quant Hub. I was also counting, I think you have 10,000 times as many employees as we do. But you think about like the risk aversion that you have to be a publicly traded company versus our ability just to run as fast as we can. And very oftentimes there's benefits from both of those and you get innovation out of those that can be a lot more risky, if you will. And so that's really, to me, is going to be an exciting era to see coming on board here.
We had the CEO of Humana speak at our opening meeting for our commission. And something both of you said is that he talked about extensively in healthcare, the ability to test, change, and retest, meaning you get medicine to human trial faster, was astounding at how many trial runs they are able to do because of AI now.
I'll say the biggest opportunity that Innovate Alabama is trying to capitalize on is the innovative companies and being able to fund and support those companies. Like we have our supplemental grant program where, we have a company like Analytical AI, who we gave them a $348,000 non-dilutive grant to be able to move from concept to commercialization. They were able to scale their operations and also hire 2 more employees that then gave them the capacity to go and secure a $20 million federal grant. So that's 20 million new federal dollars coming into the state of Alabama off of a $348,000 investment. And they're working with Custom and Border Patrol to streamline the security airport checkpoint process for passengers with limited mobility. And they're using AI to do that. And so, that's the opportunity that we're trying to capitalize on, is identify those companies that are innovating in this space and then just fund and resource them as much as we can.
Very good.
You all had excellent, wonderful points about how AI can truly make significant changes in our society. From an educational perspective, I think much like we have English 101, History 101, we need AI 101. We need to establish what the expected student learning outcomes are. And it's extremely challenging because the world of AI, oh my gosh, it changes every single week. So I think there are some fundamental principles, though, that we can come together and coalesce on through the Alabama Commission on Higher Education and through other entities being involved, that we can pull together a set of SLOs to truly develop, a common curriculum of AI that the students who graduate from any institution in the state of Alabama can be equipped with, so that graduates from any institution in our state can truly be ready for the workforce that is ahead of us. So I think that's the greatest opportunity ahead of us.
Excellent. Well done. Questions from the audience? I know we've got a little bit. Yes, sir.
Ron Chodary, University of South Alabama. So it's a limited case since we're not going to throw AI at everything, but there is one problem I'd like to throw AI at. So I do faculty development and also graduate student development. So new faculty come into the university, right? Maybe a large place like Auburn or University of Alabama. Very often they also hire, let's say, new PhD students coming possibly from international locations. Getting new instructors up to speed, right? Not only with academic analytic data that's coming out of, let's say, they're running a lab or a calculus section or something like that, but both get the administrative side of data, right? That transfer, the transfer credit background and where this particular student might have come from, and then the academic stuff that's happening real time, right? How do we think about these systems merging in ways to give insights that we can get new people up to par more quickly so they can build their own confidence and the learning environment can be more effective for learners as well. The same would apply in the K-12 sector when new teachers go into the classroom.
Mind if I jump on that one? So I speak as faculty senate president at all of our new faculty orientation every single year. And they are hit with a fire hose of information. So the expectation that they can retain all of that after, one day is indeed problematic. So I think that's a great opportunity for honestly a senior design project for a student team to be able to take an existing large language model and put a retrieval augmented generation, a RAG model around it to take all those policies and procedures and information you have institutionally and have it available even within a firewalled setting within your institution so that any faculty member can go and ask a question to University of South Alabama's faculty chatbot, right? So I think there's an opportunity for innovation and development and student involvement there to act as a resource for faculty ongoing well beyond their initial orientation.
I'll add to that. So we actually started training adults. We have a large corporate clientele as well. And so in our case, we actually have about 3,000 K-12 teachers on our platform. And so they can actually get professional development credit. Those are on the Teams program. We're, I think, either the only or one of the very few asynchronous learning providers that actually gets teachers up to speed. And we cover a broad spectrum of STEM related courses, but also we go into AI and prompt engineering. So you can imagine there's a shortage of math teachers. There's definitely a shortage of data science and data analytics teachers. And so our goal is really to give them the confidence that maybe they're not a data science teacher, but they can raise their hand and say, okay, I'll teach that class. And so we're actually addressing that. And so really it goes into higher ed and faculty as well. That's less on the like institutional specific around, what's our selected ethics policy and that sort of thing. But when it comes to just giving teachers those basic tools and the confidence to teach, that's something that we're actively providing on our platform.
I don't want to give an Oracle commercial. You can get Oracle commercials like 6 ways to Sunday. But what the good professor talked about is actually in production, kind of with Oracle products. We're using AI agents and the RAG technique to kind of help provide better context to information that is presented in the kind of day-to-day applications that they're using, as well as kind of the reporting and analytics tools that they're using. It's wonderful to look at a screen and you see some data, but as a new employee, you don't have any context kind of for kind of what that means.
Good. I think we may have time. Well, we're a little over time. Are we good? Okay. I just got all right. So join me in thanking our panel. Thank you all very much. Great job.